Meet Reed Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling, award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reed is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reed.
Howdy, listeners and viewers, coast to coast, the Gulf to Canada, and around the globe. This is Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio. Just returned from signing lots and lots and lots of books in Idaho. So we got the backdrop here. We got the studio, here at the ranch. A little bit better than the on-the-road backdrop. Several of you made comments about that, but unfortunately there was no alternative other than no show. So today we are going to keep going on our continuing saga of the more devious, more insidious, and more non-transparent, quote-unquote, investigation by the Secret Service and the FBI on the Trump conspiracy, right? The conspiracy to assassinate Trump, which is exactly what it was. And there's all sorts of things for me to bring you today, but it is a slow, glacier-like walk by the FBI, the three-letter agencies, in supposedly coming to some resolution, some investigation, some finding of fact on this. We'll go over that in just a bit. And we are going to have, of course, our rant story and our founder's quote. And I'm going to bring you the latest economic statistics, which I've been in a habit of doing most of the shows over the last 3 months because they are lying dogs. They ain't telling you the truth, and they haven't been for a long time, folks. And they are doing everything they can, subterfuge, obfuscation, censorship, lack of transparency, avoiding the issues to try and swing this election. Oh, and did I mention election fraud and illegal aliens voting? We're going to be covering that in the rat-a-tat-tat, along with other things, today also. So let's get going, shall we? You bet. Okay, so the founder's quote, right? This is John Jay. We don't talk about him much, but a great patriot. We'll have a little historical segment on him sometime in the coming shows. I quote, "America belongs to we the people. It does not belong to Congress. It doesn't belong to special interest groups. It does not belong to the courts. It belongs to we the people," unquote. John, well said and true, and something that we ought to remember, folks, particularly with this election coming up. And I do hope your fat butts are off the couch and involved, that you are writing checks to the candidates and causes which make a difference, that you are passing on the information you get from this and other shows, the websites with all the background information like we have on the rightsideradio.com. I mean, it is a huge store of information, which of course is why it's under malicious attack, like at the rate of 5,000 attacks a day by, outfits out of Washington, D.C., the Ukraine, and other, shall we say, likely places. Oh, it's just all a coincidence, of course. And we're going to be talking about censorship today in our rat-a-tat-tat. Folks, if you don't pass on links, if you don't pass on videos of, for instance, what Kamala's real beliefs are that they're now trying to hide, she's a moderate. Did you know that? She's a moderate, and she's an American, and she loves you all, and she loves the country, and she loves the Constitution. Right. As you'll see today, not so much. And there's a whole section on the website with her actual quotes and the quotes of, as they call him, Coach Tim Walz. I call him Tampin' Tim, but that's a whole nother story that we'll get into sometime in the next coming week or two. You must get involved. If you send links to 10 people or 20 people or however many people you need, and they send to 20 people, then you have the effect, you have a multiplier effect And Google is blocking it all, folks. Facebook just admitted having blocked it all for the past umpty-ump years in a congressional hearing. That'll be in the rat-a-tat-tat. Pretty telling, pretty telling. So get off the couch, write checks, go to our Take Action page. We have all sorts of candidates or groups of candidates or causes where it's multiple matches. You put in $1, it's worth $5. You put in $5, it's worth $50. It's money well spent in many tight races. And we know who's backing the Dems, right? It is the dark money of foreign outfits. And there's all sorts of stuff going on there. Tim Walz is an agent of China, but we'll get into that. And write your letters, call your representatives, call your senators. I don't care if you're in a blue state or not, and make it happen. It's only through our collective effort are we going to win this election in the face of the overwhelming amount of fraud and games they are throwing at us and they plan to throw at us. Trust me on this. The outcome is in doubt, folks. This is not a slam dunk. The outcome is in doubt. And each one of us has to do our part to remove the doubt as much as we can and hopefully overcome the fraud that they're going to be bringing and that they're already bringing, to be honest with you, as we will discuss today. So the ranch story. Well, this is kind of an interesting story. So we had a new hay client this year, and he was insistent on lots of alfalfa in his grass alfalfa mix. And we spent extra time with him. Okay, I mean, we take really good care of our hay buyers, and we go the extra mile whenever we can. So we took him out into the fields. We showed him the fields. I sent him pictures of, fields like probably 80% alfalfa, or the most heavily alfalfa'd fields that we have. And all that was great. He came out and saw it for himself. All that was great. We gave him all the bales off of those fields. And it wasn't a whole lot of bales, 20 or whatever. But we gave him, and we worked to separate the bales. I mean, this was all extra work on our part. We didn't charge him anything more than the going rate. In fact, we gave him the discount for 20 plus bales or more per bale. And we get a call. My ranch lieutenant gets a call from him, and he comes out and he starts screaming at him, saying that he probed. I didn't even know there was a probe for this, that he probed the bales and there wasn't a single leaf of alfalfa in them. Now, why don't we just say he is so far in the ozone that he's past the outer rings of Saturn, okay? In fact, you can look at the bales and see how green they are, particularly off that field that was literally 80% alfalfa. And the reason he wants so much alfalfa, because too much alfalfa is bad for horses. It'll make them colic, make them founder. It's just not a good thing. Was that he also had calves that he was feeding along with his horses. So the bottom line is he has some probe that I'm not aware of that tells him there's not a leaf, not a single leafy green piece of alfalfa in those bales, which are up to 80% alfalfa. So we just politely said, we know what's in those bales. You know what's in those bales. We got the pictures. We got the little tours you did of where we cut your hay. You saw where the hay came off of. In fact, we loaded you out of the field on one of those loads. I mean, same field, same picture, same tour, you name it. And TS, I think you know what that stands for. And we don't normally do that, but to be honest with you, I really don't want to deal with this guy again. So the moral of this story is sometimes, shall we say, favors are not appreciated nor repaid. And no matter what you do to try and please somebody, they have some kind of personality or idiosyncratic twists, quirk, that will make them impossible to please. And when that happens, the red flags go up the pole and run like hell in the opposite direction forevermore. Oh, yeah, you bet. And by the way, as a little side, I almost told him to take his probe and fill in the blank, but I didn't. Instead, I was a gentleman rancher, and I said, you know, you might want to get a new probe. That's all I said. All right, let's get on with the Trump update, shall we? The Trump assassination conspiracy update. Well, the FBI, the Secret Service, are doing everything in their power to not give any information, to slow walk this, to let it get drowned out by the cacophony of news, election and otherwise, that is going on. Here's what we've learned. There's a whistleblower that came forward, none other than one of the counter snipers of the Secret Service. His name is Schaefer, and he has now testified to Congress. He has evidence to back this up. In his words, the FBI has been busy evidence tampering on this investigation. This is a Secret Service counter sniper testifying with backup under oath. He has revealed, it's unbelievable, he has revealed that the Secret Service refused. It's not like it wasn't offered or they didn't think about it. They refused the local police radios that were offered to them by the local and the Pennsylvania State Police. So there was no communications between them. They refused to put a Secret Service liaison in the communications center for the event. You know, this is all intentional, folks. This is not like mistakes. Now, what were they trying to do? Maybe culpability denial down the road if the plan came off? Yeah, probably. And then, of course, I told you a little bit last week. I mean, it was just breaking news as the show was coming out. The FBI released 10 days after the event, the shooters, the Oswald stand-in in this JFK 1963 dust-off attempt, to someone, we don't even know who, and the body has been cremated. But it gets better. The Secret Service whistleblower has now told Congress that the coroner, and Congress has checked this out, this is true, the coroner, who's in charge of like all dead bodies, you know, wherever you go in the United States, it's the coroner, who's usually adjunct or part of the sheriff's office and certainly part of the county, okay? The coroner was never notified by the FBI that they were taking the body. He never gave them permission to take the body, and they took the body before he could perform a full autopsy. So here's the bottom line. We don't know how many bullets hit the shooter. We now know, as I told you last week, he was hit by two, one by the local SWAT team and one by the Secret Service SWAT team, new information. We don't know what types of bullets. We don't know if there was a third shot, you know, like the other shooter, who I am 99% sure existed, just like the JFK playbook. I brought you that last week too, and I brought you the confessions of the guy who was on the grassy knoll who took the fatal shot at Kennedy. After all these years, he's in prison. Then we find out that Ron Johnson, who, by the way, is a trooper, he is a great senator from Wisconsin. You got to support this guy, or support who he says to support, who thinks like him. He and Paul and Rand they're really the watchdogs of the Senate. He is conducting investigations in the Senate on this and getting stonewalled at every turn. And in the Congress, in the House, Corey Mills, Eli Crane, Chip Roy, Andy Biggs are getting the same treatment from the Secret Service, the FBI, the Justice Department, the CIA, you name it. And then, of course, the FBI comes out with a statement saying, oh, we were just following protocol and, cremating the body, and those are our rules. And, and hosing down, like we're talking about the day after the attempt, pressure washing the roof, because, there wouldn't be any evidence on the roof where the shooter was shooting, do you think? No. Pressure washing the roof, that's just our standard protocol, and we would never, ever, under any conditions, ever interfere with a congressional investigation. Yeah. And we wouldn't do fake FISA warrants, and we wouldn't do hurricane crossfire operations, and we wouldn't have a Peter Strzok, Elisa Lisa, his lover, in there, and we wouldn't pay them $2 million to go away and keep their mouths shut in a lawsuit we settled with them 2 months ago without anybody knowing. That FBI, whatever. Okay, so the Secret Service, there's another deal going on here. I mean, the Secret Service seems to have been corrupted like the FBI has been corrupted, at least at the upper echelons. I mean, a lot of the boots on the ground at the FBI and Secret Service are great folks, i.e., Schaefer coming in to testify before Congress, which takes a lot of cojones, right? Now, he's going to get a bunch of nonsense from Mayorkas at DHS and Rowe, the supposed new head of Secret Service, who we find out was the guy who refused all the additional security requests by the Trump team after denying it in Congress. I mean, come on, please. Anyway, I will bring you more information as it becomes available. We will have something on this every show because I'm not getting off of this. This was an assassination attempt. It was a deep state hit job. It was a JFK dust off. And the more they slow walk it, the more they hide, the more they destroy, or in the words of the Secret Service whistleblower, tamper with the evidence, quote unquote, the more I am convinced of it. And so should you be. And it brings to mind a question. If they would do this to Trump, who obviously has some power, has some protection, has some money, has some moxie, has a huge following, what would they do to you if they get in power? If they didn't like the way you think, the way you talk, the way you communicate, the way you vote, what you buy? Better think about that, folks, because if they get into power, it's going to be coming into play, as will other things that we'll talk about in the future. On the economy, okay, well, the economy's just great. It's the best in the world, folks. Don't you worry your pretty little heads, because your wages are going up and inflation's going down and everything is rosy and it's going to be so good. And Kamala Harris is going to give you $25,000 of your own money. You are a taxpayer, right? $25,000 of your own money to go out and make a down payment on a house if you're a new buyer, and blah, 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 blah. Well, here we go. Get ready for these stats, right? Hot off the press. Retail sales, give or take, plus 1% in July, after inflation, negative. Retail sales, okay, up about 2% year over year. If you remember correctly, inflation averaged like 3.9% over the last year. And remember, that doesn't include food, it doesn't include fuel, and it doesn't include housing. Even then, it was 3.9%. That means retail sales went down 1.9% in the last year. Just little tidbits they forget to mention was they're telling you all these great stats, and the mainstream media is screaming it out, covering their backsides as the lies go on and on and on. The drumbeat of mistruths. Yeah. And by the way, so that you know, David Stockman, excellent economist, did a study on retail sales since May of 2020. 7.1% reduction since May of 2020 in retail sales in the United States. And that's before inflation, folks. So that means retail sales are down like 20% after inflation. That's a huge, huge drop. No wonder Lord & Taylor's is closing their stores. Big Lots is closing their stores. Starbucks is closing locations. CVS, Right Way, all the pharmacies are closing, literally thousands of locations. Walmarts are closing locations. Does that sound like retail sales are booming to you? I don't think so. The Empire State Manufacturing Gauge, just out in the last day or two, it actually went up a little bit, but it's at 4.7% negative territory. However, the Philadelphia Fed Manufacturing Index came out the same day. It is, yeah, it's down to 39. Anything below 50 is not good. It's negative. And that's down from 50 the month before. That's an 11 percentage point drop in 1 month in manufacturing indexes. Now that is, that's rather huge, particularly when the government said it was going to go up 13.9%. That, folks, is about a 19% differential between the projection and the actual. Okay, so home builders, right? I mean, they've been telling you about the housing market and all this kind of stuff. Home builder, and I've been warning you. And I have another video on the website today under family safety, the preparedness page, which you folks ought to be watching. You better be looking at the preparedness page on the rightsideradio.com. And the stuff I just brought you on Trump, by the way, you can see the videos, see the testimony, the whole 9 yards. It's on the Trump page, upper right-hand corner of the homepage of ontherightsideradio.com. Click on the Trump assassination attempt, and it'll bring you all the articles, all the new stuff, all the videos, you name it. I don't say anything here that I don't back up, okay? That's kind of critical. So home builders' confidence, this is a survey that they do. It dropped 11 points in the last month from 50, remember that's kind of, it's not going up, it's not going down, to 39. That means deep negative territory. Permits, right? You got to pull a permit to build a house. New permits are down 4% month over month. That's just a month, down 4%. 69%, 69% of this housing stuff has a negative economic outlook. 69%. That's what the home builders believe is going to happen in the future. 69% negative. Starts, new home starts, are down 6.8% month over month. It's now at the lowest level, by the way, since May of 2020. Investor sales, investors buying houses. In quarter two, they've now done the tabulation. 69% of all sales that occurred in the second quarter of this year were to investors, and a significant chunk of that to the you will own nothing and you will be happy crowd, BlackRock and the crew. Unemployment expectations. This is a survey they do of households and employed people saying, how likely do you think it is you're not going to get laid off? You're going to be able to keep your job. You're going to have income coming in. Well, guess what? It's now it has dropped in the last month to the lowest level since 2014. Okay? Lowest level since 2014. In quarter one, non-financial debt, this means debt, all debt, consumer debt, business debt, etc., other than bank debt, banks owing one another, or the Federal Reserve, I'm making this simple, I'm giving the generality here, is now 260%. That's 260% of our entire GDP. That's right. Almost 3 times GDP, and that is non-financial debt, household, credit card, you name it. Yeah, not good. By the way, think about this, get on the chessboard here. If people are supporting debt, which is almost 3 times the gross domestic product, and they're paying interest rates at historically high levels, 5 to 10% on consumer, car, etc. loans, some of them are higher, 20 to 25% on credit card debt. Businesses are paying about the same. That means there's no money for new investment. That means there's no money for expansion. That means there's no money for new hiring. What does that tell you about the future of the economy? I mean, it's just 2 plus 2 is 4. It's the way it is. And by the way, in this case, 4 minus 2 is 2. That's just the way it is. The leading economic indicators, they've gone down roughly, except for 1 month about a year and a half ago. They've gone down 27 months in a row. They have forecast every recession since, decades and decades ago, as has the inversion or reinversion of the yield curve, which is the difference between short-term and long-term interest rates. And that yield curve has been down 17 months in a row, the longest in United States history, inverted. And it's now starting to cross back into non-inverted territory. That means interest rates are higher than inflation, or interest rates are higher, that's in the big term. Long-term interest rates are getting higher than short-term interest rates. Okay, in other words, the inversion is correcting. That has triggered a recession, in some cases a severe recession, in every recessionary period since World War II, give or take a few years. So there you go. So much for the soft landing they try and tell us we're headed into, or the no recession. Everything's going to be dandy. Oh, the leading indicators, by the way, they went down again 0.1% in Q4. That's the projection, excuse me. That's the projection for Q4. The projection is 0% for Q3. I don't need to tell you that that's already been surpassed on the negative side. And then finally, I told you last week or the week before about Project Embridge. That's Bridge, M capital B Bridge. And that is the BRICS countries putting together their common currency based on a 40% gold backing and a 40% local currency backing, and excluding dollars and the SWIFT system from even being able to interact with what they're setting up to get that done. And that meeting is coming up in October. There's another video out that explains it beautifully, and it's worth watching. It's on the website under Economy, Rat-a-tat-tat, the Preparedness page, and Family Safety. Take a gander at that video and pass it on to people so they know what's going on. All this stuff has to be passed on. Okay? Google is hammering us on distribution, on algorithms, and everything else, and they're doing the same thing to every other commentator, newscaster, or show like ours. Get the word out where they can't screw with it in email. And even in email, as I keep telling you, check your spam file. You will be astounded at how much stuff Google is relegating to the scrap heap of spam because they don't want you reading it, knowing about it, or seeing it. Yeah, exactly. Okay, how about a little rat-a-tat-tat? And we'll start off with some news on election fraud, which is a seesaw battle across the United States. A seesaw battle, I might add, at best. You can judge for yourself. And look, this just scratches the tip of the iceberg, the information I'm bringing you today. So in California, the state legislature out there, this is unbelievable. Listen carefully. They are passing a law. I mean, literally, they are passing a law which makes it illegal for California or any jurisdiction in California, local, county, whatever, to require or to pass a law that requires ID to vote. Think about that. And there's no illegal aliens there, of course, so who has to worry about that little, piece of nonsense? Yeah, I'm not making this up, folks. In Idaho, of all places, there are actually jurisdictions now that do not require an ID to vote. Okay? That's supposed to be a red state. What's going on there? Texas, this is good news. They've purged 1 million voters from the voter rolls. Abbott just announced it. It was a suit, in fact, by Judicial Watch. We'll talk more about them because they really deserve your support. But illegal aliens, 6,000. 457,000 dead people, rising from the grave to vote for Kamala Harris and Tampon Tim, and 134,000 folks who had moved out of Texas Think about the voter rolls across the United States. I've brought you these stories before. Over 2.7 million just in 26 states, including red states, which should not be on the voter rolls. And that doesn't count the illegally registered illegal aliens in many states right now, particularly with the federal mandate. I brought this to you before, that anybody signing up for a federal welfare program, federal benefits, Medicaid, Social Security, you name it, absolutely must. This is federal edict from the administration, Kamala Harris herself, must be registered to vote. Oh, and you don't have to say whether they're an illegal alien or not. Okay. That should be just great. I wonder how the states are going to deal with that, including, by the way, Wyoming, where the governor didn't want to go one step further and require proof of citizenship at the voting booth. Okay. That should work out terrifically well. In Wisconsin, this is kind of good news. The Wisconsin Supreme Court, which, by the way, is a liberal court, they ruled that the Green Party candidate, Jill Stein, who is even left of Kamala, if that's possible, will remain on the ballot. The Democrats have been suing. As you know, they sued to get Trump off the ballot in a whole bunch of states. That got thrown out. Now they're suing to get all the third-party candidates off the ballot. They sued RFK prior to him dropping his campaign and endorsing Trump to get him off the ballot because they're concerned that these third-party candidates will suck votes from Kamala Harris and her running mate. So, they're pulling out all the stops. But listen, folks, we are the threat to democracy. Right. Okay. Why don't you ask the 2,400, whatever it was, delegates that were elected in primaries by the Democratic Party to support Joe Biden, who never got to vote again, and here they have Kamala Harris and Timmy Baby. All right, no problem. But that's good. Georgia, the opposite. An administrative law judge, I think it'll probably be appealed, has ruled that the 4 third-party candidates in that state have to be booted from the ballot. And Georgia is a rather critical state, as you know. In Arizona, they are actually proceeding with their corrupt plan. I told you about this anomaly in the Arizona law. It prohibits anybody who's not an Arizona or U.S. resident from voting in Arizona elections, but it's silent on federal elections. The Democrats and the corrupt rhinos in Maricopa County, by far the most populous county in Arizona, they have seized on this loophole, and they are mailing federal-only ballots to illegal aliens. I'm not making this up. I'm really not making. I wish I was making this up. Carrie Lake is running for Senate down there. I love her. I think she is just terrific. She needs your support. Take Action page. All these articles, by the way, are posted under election fraud on the election fraud page, rat-a-tat-tat, and some of them under the audio bar, the most outrageous videos of them all. In Ohio, Marino, the Republican candidate for Congress, taking J.D. Vance's seat. Excellent candidate, by the way, terrific, and absolutely not a rhino, supported by Trump. He has now uncovered Ohio actually registering illegal aliens to vote. So that's a big mess out there. Support Marino. Once again, Take Action page, rat-a-tat-tat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I can go on, but this gives you an idea of the flavor of the lawfare out there, the illegal alien nonsense going on, et cetera. But, gee, didn't the Dems promise us that this wasn't the purpose of getting 10 million people across the border? No, it was just, humanitarian reasons. Yes. Looking for a better life. That's all these folks are, folks. That's all the Democrats care about, is a better life for everybody. Okay. In California, let's go back to California. We'll go into kind of the general rat-a-tat-tat here. California has also just passed a law. It's on Governor Newsom's desk, Newsom Gruesome, or Gruesome Newsom, whichever you prefer, $150,000 taxpayer loans to illegal aliens for down payments on houses. Actually, it's either 20% of the down payment, you know what real estate prices are out there, or it is 150 grand of taxpayer money to illegal aliens to buy houses while Americans struggle to put roofs over their head. Okay, terrific. It's called, by the way, the California Dream Act for All. Don't you just have warm fuzzies over this? Wow. And by the way, written into the law is that any defaults, in other words, the illegal aliens get $150,000 of taxpayer money. They go out and buy a house, driving up house prices, of course, for everybody else, and excluding or creating competition for other home buyers like Americans, those pesky American citizens. And then if they default, as of course most of them will because they're getting something for nothing, you, the taxpayer, gets to bail out the default. Oh, how's that for 2 slaps in the face by a dead fish? That's just terrific. The FBI, this is a leaked document, just came out literally as I'm doing the show, and it's gone several places. But did you know that gun owners are violent extremists? And they have a whole new set of symbols down at the FBI. Molin Lob, the Texas battle cry, come and take it, which goes back in history to the plains of San Jacinto and Houston's victory over Santa Ana there. They have, the word prepper. By the way, if you're a prepper, you are a violent extremist, folks. So take all that food out of your pantry, take down your solar panels, and be a good citizen. Otherwise, you're going to be surveilled. Ooh, yes, absolutely. And I can go on, but everything else is just as moronic as what I just brought you. By the way, one of the Democratic senators, I think it was Sherrod, I'm not really sure, I'll check on it for you for next show, actually came out and used the words, "Our intent is to kill all MAGA supporters." I mean, I have the article on the website, on the rightsideradio.com. You can interpret it for yourself. But this is what this guy said. I brought you other stories, other little red dots, by the way, which kind of tie into this theme of the left, silence the opposition and then dispatch them to wherever, the camps or, the cremation centers, whichever. Massachusetts. Okay, they've been caught with their hands in the illegal alien taxpayer cookie jar. It's now come out that they've spent $1 billion in the last year supporting illegal aliens in Massachusetts. Oh, I'm sure the Massachusetts folks are just ecstatic about the use of their taxpayer funds hidden from them, and now the state is refusing to say exactly what it was spent for in terms of helping our poor, struggling, looking for a better life, illegal transplants from the South and 184 other countries around the globe. The Supreme Court, good job. They shut down the latest and greatest attempt by Kamala Harris and the cadaver president to refund and repay and forgive student loans. I'll remind you that all this goes back to student loans used to be private, okay? They were privately given. Then Barack Obama, must be a coincidence, in 2014 nationalized student loans. All the student loans became federal. You don't think they had all this in mind, do you? Kind of like 10 million people over the southern border and voting. They would never think that far in advance, would they? Yeah. By the way, the student loan morass is a real morass. It is filled with corruption. It is grift lending. And did you know that under student loans, you cannot discharge them in bankruptcy? It's about the only debt that exists that can't be discharged in bankruptcy unless you are fraudulent in your bankruptcy filing. So it would seem to me if they really wanted to fix the student loan problem and not buy votes with your money and my money, that they would simply correct that so that you could, if you can't pay your student loan, file bankruptcy as provided for in the Constitution of the United States and under every single state law. But, I'm just a hayseed from Wyoming. Zuckerberg. I brought you a story about 3 months ago where he said he was not going to participate in this election, not going to give money to any local elections, and not going to fund drop boxes, and not going to support either party or any candidate with money. That must have been a lead up to his congressional testimony, including a letter to Jim Jordan, which, by the way, is posted on the website. So make sure you read it. It's really quite interesting, where he admits that Facebook was coerced and pounded on by the government, including the administration, including Kamala Harris, to, shall we say, censor, suppress, manipulate, distort, or remove all sorts of things, including the Hunter laptop deal, the COVID deal, what else? Oh, the J6 stuff. And this is a big deal, folks, because he goes on in the letter to say that if he had to do this over again, knowing what he knows now, he wouldn't do it. And he's changed policies so that they won't do it. And there'll be no further suppression, algorithm change, manipulation, censorship, takedowns, or whatever of similar types of information. Although he put one caveat in his letter, which said, we won't be doing that now or in the future, waiting for fact checkers. So what happens when the corrupt fact checkers come out and incorrectly, intentionally, say that something stated is not fact? I guess we'll have to wait to see. But this is a big deal because a lot of information and communications occur over Facebook, and it could have a beneficial impact on the election, for sure. Which, of course, is exactly why the government's involved, telling him not to post, to take down, or whatever. Europe. Europe is really, really, really going totalitarian in their clampdown on information. People are being thrown in jail in Britain for posting anything that's anti-government or anti-immigration. The same is true in several other European countries, including France. And the European Union just arrested Paul Durov. He happens to be Russian, and of course they blame it on that. But he's the president and founder of Telegram, the Telegram communication system, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with and many of you may use. And this is for misinformation, disinformation, blah, 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 the usual cadence of nonsense. And watch carefully what's happening in Europe. I'm going to bring you more on this on future shows, because that kind of portends what will be happening in the United States if Kamala Harris and her crew of communists gets elected through fraud or otherwise. Tim Waltz. Tim Waltz, it's now come out, and these articles are up on the website for you. We have a whole little section on Kamala in her own words and Timmy in his own words, which they're now trying to run from like they have afterburners in their little behinds. Yes. And Tim Waltz has attended 30 events or made 30 trips to communist China, along with NGOs. And it seems that Tim Waltz is really cozy with the Red Chinese, even perhaps more so than Biden, who is taking his millions from the CCP and CCP related companies, which he's been caught on, but of course not prosecuted on or impeached for, because justice is distributed equally right now here in the United States. One last thing. One of the speakers at the Democratic Convention, actually it's two last things. One of the speakers at the Democratic Convention was the president of the Liberty for All group, whatever, which is one of the primary groups for LGBTQ, whatever folks. And in her speech, she said that the Constitution is just a piece of paper and we need to reimagine democracy, which kind of ties in what Kamala has talked about in terms of getting amendments to the Constitution and, along with Cadaver, stacking the Supreme Court. You know, they all move in sync over there on the extreme left. It doesn't surprise me whatsoever, and it shouldn't surprise you. Remember, they have to take down the pillars of faith, family, and the Constitution to get done what they want to get done in the United States. And of course, they have to disarm the populace for safety reasons, their own safety. Yes, they do. Along the Kamala Harris lines, Kami Harris, it seems that her economic plan not only includes price controls, which I talked to you about last week, they have not worked anywhere in all the places they've been tried, including, Soviet Russia, Communist China, Venezuela, etc. What do they have in the communist countries? That's right, price controls. In fact, they have just the opposite effect, which of course is what's really intended. But she now has come up with an economic plan. I warned you about this months ago, and California is already trying to implement it, and that is unrealized capital gains taxes. In other words, let's say you bought your house for $200,000 and it's now worth $400,000. Well, you're going to owe a tax on the $200,000 before you sell the house. That's right, before you sell the house. And there's no talk about what happens if you sell the house for $300,000. Do they give you a refund with interest? Somehow, I don't think so. The same with stocks, the same with bonds, the same with other assets. So think about that, the unrealized capital gains taxes. And then to compound that problem, which will drive this economy and investment into the dirt and real estate into the dirt, any assets, they want to raise the capital gains taxes from their current 23-ish% to 44%. So aren't you just going to rush right out and buy stock and buy real estate and buy investments and assets and employ people if you know that if they go up in value before you sell them and realize the gains, you're going to pay a tax, the unrealized capital gains tax, and you're going to pay double the rate of today's tax? Wow, that sounds like a great economic plan to me, don't you think? One of the things she's running away from, by the way, is her support of reparations, which is trillions and trillions of dollars, folks. Maybe that's how she plans to fund it, the unrealized capital gains tax. We're going to go into greater depth on Kami Harris's so-called economic plan, which she is bobbing and weaving around like a duck dancing on the head of a pin, next week. But it's enough to shiver me timbers, shall we say, shiver me timbers. And that's it for this week. More at you next week. I guarantee there'll be no shortage of information. Get involved. Go to the Take Action page on the rightsideradio.com. Send out links. Send out links of this show and other shows to your friends. Ask them to send it to their friends. Send some money to these people. Marino, Kerry Lake. Do the 5X, 8X, 10X multipliers on the Take Action page. Write and call your congressmen, senators on important issues. Even if they're from a blue state, your voice matters. Remember our quote from John Jay. We are the government. This exists for us. They own nothing. We own everything, and they work for us. This is Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio. Keep the wind at your back till we talk next week.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.